Welcome into Path to the College Football Playoff, the Clemson edition. Ryan Leaf, Emmanuel Acho, Matt Barrie. Clemson tried to become the first team to win back-to-back national championships since Alabama did so in 2011, 2012. The thing I love about Clemson coming into this one, gentlemen, defending champs, underdogs all season. Opening thought on the Clemson Tigers.
A lot of resiliency, a lot of fight. And I say that not because of the course of the season. I say that because of what we saw and what we saw from them last against Ohio State.
Yeah, to be down 16-0 in that game. I was worried what would happen. They hadn't faced any adversity since that North Carolina game, what they would look like against an elite team down at the end of the game. They showed their resolve and came out with flying colors.
I will tell you, Trevor Lawrence perhaps picked the best time to play maybe his best game at Clemson, and that's saying a lot. You mentioned the North Carolina game. You mentioned the Ohio State game. It was a season that was for Clemson. Here's how they got here.
And we welcome you to Death Valley as the reigning national champs begin defense of that title.
You can pencil Clemson in for one of those Final Four spots now.
You know who's up in the house tonight. The champions are back in your town.
They want to destroy teams. That's how champions should think.
The Tigers strike again.
It's not easy to win. Again, I know that we're supposed to just destroy everybody.
2-point conversion for the lead against number one. This baby's over. Clemson will survive.
I face a challenge head on. And if you think I'm scared, I can say you dead wrong.
Wide open is Justin Ross. T. Higgins down the sideline. Touchdown, Clemson. Clemson has hung a 60 spot on Virginia.
This is what happens when you win the ACC championship. You get a chance to go play for the whole thing.
Let's go!
The undefeated Buckeyes, the undefeated Tigers. Lawrence in a foot race. Touchdown, Tigers! A game-changing play. ETN reads. Touchdown, Tigers! Fields, it's intercepted. And the Tigers are not going to be dethroned tonight. They'll punch their ticket to New Orleans.
That's just who we are. It's just what we do. We finish.
Since that North Carolina near miss, I mean, they've blown out every opponent in front of their way, save Ohio State, where they had to come back, as you mentioned, from 16 down. When you look at Clemson, now I want to say both teams had the same amount of layoff. You get 15 off days between the CFP semifinal and the national championship on Monday, January 13th. What are the advantages and disadvantages for Clemson of having that time off?
Clemson gets the bigger advantage over LSU because Clemson has more work to do schematically as far as how are we going to stop this LSU offense. So for Clemson, it's huge. You're telling me you're going to give Brent Venables an extra week to cook something up? Imagine what he did against Ohio State. Again, first two possessions of the game, they come out in the 4-down front. That doesn't work. He balls up his paper, scratch that. Let's switch to a 3-down front and essentially shuts Ohio State down. So huge for Clemson to have that extra week.
For me, it's all about the physicality of the games they played in. Clemson played in maybe one of the most physical football games against one of the most physical football teams in Ohio State. You watched LSU, they just walked over Oklahoma. They could have gone out there in their shorts and T-shirts for all you know and got it done. So, and they were playing at their peak. You know, sometimes when you've peaked and you're playing as good as you are, a long layoff kind of dissolves that a little bit. What Clemson brings to the table is to get healthy again. Both their wide receivers were really banged up.
Ross,
that's going to be
Higgins.
huge. Yeah, that'll be big for them for
both those guys
this depth.
banged up early in that game. Trevor Lawrence took the big hit. He was able to come back in that game and get the win. Plus, you're looking from a travel standpoint. LSU could look, short little bus ride from Baton Rouge to New Orleans. Clemson to New Orleans isn't that long of a trip, but still a lot of advantages for LSU to kind of just sit there, lie in wait. Clemson gets to get healthy. Schematically is a great point, especially going up against this LSU team. Trevor Lawrence has done some great things at Clemson, but perhaps his comeback against Ohio State, the best of them all. Here's some defining plays from Lawrence in the game. Justin Ross, 16-yard pass. They had to find the rhythm. 2 plays later, 67-yard run. Well, there's the dart to Ross again. First down, Tigers lose the chains. But here it is, 2 plays later. This is what really changed the tide.
Genius offensively. Ohio State's in man-to-man on the outside, man-to-man across the board. That means every defender's back's turned. Trevor Lawrence said, dial up 1-6, because I'm going to take it to the house myself.
He had said watching film coming into this game, he knew there'd be opportunities to run against Ohio State. You saw it there. What about Lynn J. Dixon, 17-yard run, first down Tigers. And again, they had to find ways to keep drives going against Ohio State to keep the momentum. And then Lawrence again with his feet 16-yarder.
Patience. Offensively, what they had to go through all game, dealing with adversity, I think that was huge. Watch this. They fake the draw, or they run another draw with Trevor Lawrence again, which ultimately sets up the biggest play of the night for them when they scored the winning touchdown to ATN. And that for me was a lot in play all week long, how they prepared. Here it is right here. They faked the draw like just a little earlier.
This play call.
Genius. It's genius. As a linebacker, you're ready. You're chewing down on your mouthpiece. Here comes the draw. Here comes the draw. Oh, I'm about to eat it up, Barrie. Next thing you know, ETN, he just scooted out the backfield on you. Genius play.
A lot of people comparing that to the Tebow jump pass back in the day. I mean, that was at the goal line, and this was much bigger. But it was clear that Ohio State had now had to respect Trevor Lawrence, the runner, and rightfully so. He found other ways to help his team in the win, rushing for a career-high 107 yards, which included a 67-yard run in the end zone, giving his team the momentum going into the second half. And what might be, again, I've said this before, that 67-yard run might be the highlight of Trevor Lawrence's career, because I don't think people associate him as being a runner as much as that big, tall, rocket-armed pocket passer. What did you see in this game that gave you another element to what Lawrence can do?
It showed me that Lawrence can do what Lawrence has to do. Early on in the game, he said, you know what, I got Ross, I got Higgins. Let me see what my dogs can do on the outside. Let's see if they can eat. Well, Okudah and Arnett, cornerbacks for Ohio State, said, nah, we locked down outside. So Lawrence said, you know what? I'm going to have to do it myself. Again, I told y'all, he was the team's leading rusher in their biggest game of the season. That tells me he'll do whatever he has to win.
What was that defining play for you in the semifinal?
Well, for me, it was huge because he had just been knocked out a little earlier. And when that happened, you saw your leader lying on the football field.
You're talking about the targeting hit.
Right here. That play right now, you watch your leader laying on the football field. I was standing on the Clemson sideline at the time. And when he got up and ran off the field, it was palpable. You felt something different. They would score on the next few plays with ATN, and the next 3 minutes and 55 seconds, they score 14 points because of this big run.
Talk about the toughness of your quarterback in that situation. Takes a big hit. Everyone watching the game, you were there in person. We're sitting there watching it in Atlanta thinking, oh, no.
Yeah.
Trevor Lawrence down. And all that did was trigger them and give them momentum.
Well, for me, it proved that he was capable of doing this, and then to follow it up with a big play. They go man-to-man like Acho told us, but watch what he does here. When you have hat on hat, you get one-on-one with the safety, and then Trevor Lawrence goes. And all he's got to do is beat him. He makes one move. Everybody else has got their back turned. And then he gets to about the 18, and you think he's going to stop out, and he goes, you know what, I can win this race. And he keeps on going. What a huge play for that team. It got him right back in the game. And when we walked in at halftime, I looked at all my friends here at ESPN and went, they're right back in it.
Yeah. No one's ever going to confuse Trevor Lawrence with being Vince Young, but at least on that moment right there to be able to get his team back in it. And I love games that are strength versus strength when you look at what we have coming in to the national championship. LSU's offense not only puts up the most points, but averages over 560 total yards per game, most in the FBS, while Clemson's defense has only allowed 300 total yards in a game twice this season. So, Clemson, they lose all the first-rounders. The defensive pass rush has gone to the NFL. People talk about how statistically this defense is just as good. Next up, slowing down the LSU offense. Good luck. How does that happen?
I got two words. Isaiah Simmons. He is the linebacker for Clemson. And to call him a linebacker, gentlemen, would be a disservice because he's a linebacker that can truly play safety as well. You'll see him. He's in the middle of the field. They're going to run a cat corner blitz, which means Tanner Muse is going to roll down and think he's going to steal one. But Justin Fields sees it. He's like, uh-oh, I'm not throwing it right now. Isaiah Simmons, he's eyeballing Fields the whole time. Travels a whole distance, gives you 26 yards, covers half the width of the ball. Give me that pick. Next play. He's 9 yards deep. Again, he's a linebacker. What you doing 9 yards deep? Acho, why are you showing me a positive game for Ohio State? Because Isaiah Simmons, 6'4" length and range, makes a tackle, and if he doesn't get J.K. Dobbins down right there, that play is going to the house.
That's right.
So Isaiah Simmons, against a freak LSU offense, he has to be the neutralizer.
Chess match. You talk about it all the time. You've got a great player in Simmons. Now you've got a chess match with Brent Venables, who you could argue, at least in the playoff era, has been the best coordinator we've seen in college football. What is imperative for Clemson's defense?
Well, what he's been able to do in all these college football games is limit what the offense does well, and that's throwing the football. So how do they do that? And it's going to be putting pressure on him. I don't care how you get the pressure, and Acho talked about Tanner Muse being back there. He's going to be put in a position to have to cover in man-to-man. But they have great athletes, especially Isaiah Simmons, like he talked about, who can get to the quarterback, who can play in coverage, who can make tackles on the running back. That's where they're going to be the best, is when they get pressure on like they did against Justin Fields. They have to do it against Joe Burrow. But what he's so good at is getting rid of the football, when he has pressure at his feet. He's been better than anybody all year long. Looks a lot like Tom Brady when people are flying in his face.
We've talked about that battle test. Auburn's defense is really, really good. They had to face Florida's defense, who was really, really good. They had to face Georgia's defense, who's really, really good. So at least coming in, he's faced Joe Burrow, a defense that can present some problems.
No, he has. And Clemson, like you talked about, has allowed 300 yards the last 2 games, Virginia and now Ohio State. They almost allowed 300 yards in the first half against Ohio State. So they may allow for a lot of yards. Ben, don't break. They didn't allow touchdowns early in that game against the Buckeyes, which kept them in the football game, and they're going to have to do that too. If they can hold Burrow in that offense to field goals early and not run away, they'll be perfectly placed to win the game.
Yeah, we've talked about the 15-day layoff for each team. I bet Brett Venables has slept a combined 15 minutes in the 15-day layoff getting set for LSU's offense. You know who is just the pride of college football for all the good reasons? Old Dabo Swinney. He's got his team believing in a couple of things. Most importantly, that Clemson is all in.
There's people that had a mindset like that can't be done, that's impossible.
28 games in a row is awesome. We haven't lost, but if we slip up at all, we're done.
To really get to what we want to do and to achieve our goal, it's going to take 30-0.
Frankly, Dabo Swinney and the Clemson Tigers right now are the best program in America.
Big stages don't worry us. We play, from victory, not for victory. We have the experience, we have the composure. We're just trying to get to the top of the mountain.
Path to the College Football Playoff is presented by AT&T. Welcome back to Path to the College Football Playoff, presented by AT&T.
The College Football Playoff National Championship Game. Number 1 LSU, number 3 Clemson, January 13th at 8 on ESPN.
Clemson has experience in the big game. 2015, Deshaun Watson of the Tigers fell to Alabama 45-40, an all-timer in the title game out in Glendale after getting past Oklahoma. A year later, third and Renfro in Tampa. Hunter Renfro's touchdown reception with 1 second left gave Clemson its first national title since 1981. Round 3 between Clemson and Bama went to the Tide as Clemson quarterback by Kelly Bryant fell to the Tide in the semifinal in the Sugar Bowl. But last season, Clemson dominated its 2 playoff games, beating Notre Dame 30-3 and then giving Alabama its worst loss in the Nick Saban era, winning the national championship 44-16. And that's what makes Dabo Swinney, Clemson head coach, so special. They are now in their 4th national title game in the college football playoff era. That ties Alabama for the most in college football. Yet Dabo has seemingly found a way to get his team to buy in that they are always an underdog. And it works. Dabo with our Marty Smith.
Looking to throw, fires, and a touchdown. The Tigers strike again.
Wide open is Justin Ross. Touchdown, Clemson.
You have not lost a football game since New Year's Day 2018, yet you're ranked 3rd in this college football playoff scenario. What's that tell you?
Well, I think it's the first time that's happened in a long time, since like maybe 1966. The one difference to me this year is I just didn't like how our team was portrayed throughout the year.
They do look beatable. Clemson can't afford a slip-up.
They have not been their best.
Obviously, if we lose this game, they're going to kick us out. They don't want us in there anyway.
A lot of people missed out on some unbelievable football this year. This has been the most consistent team I've coached. The consistency in performance that I saw in this team this year is rare. 12 out of 13 games they dominated. It's somewhere along the line, your program should get the benefit of the doubt. Our guys' focus is on trying to win the very last game that they play in. Because if that happens, then they'll get the trophy that nobody votes on. It's going to be the one that's earned on the field.
How much of that former interim coach still lives within the man sitting right there right now?
That's every day. That's my drive. That's who I am. How I grew up, walking on, and the lessons I learned from that, the toughness, the work ethic, the drive, the stick-to-itness, the perseverance, the belief, the will being greater than the skill, that's what drives me and drove me as a player. That's why I was successful as a player. That's why I earned a scholarship. You know, that's why I got a job. I still got that graphic from ESPN that labeled, you know, graded me, gave me, I was a D+ hire. You know, there's a lot of people that don't like me out there just because I got a logo on my shirt. And if you hate me because I work my butt off to do great at my job, then you're just gonna hate me.
Joe Burrow has been so good in this game, you can't find words for it.
It's gonna be a great matchup to watch, no doubt. And you know what? We just gotta win a whole lot more battles than they do. We're gonna lose some, but when it's all said and done, we gotta try to win more than we lose.
All right, so Dabo can join a group of legends. This group with the win over LSU, becoming the 4th head coach in the AP poll era to win 3 titles in a 4-season span. Nick Saban, the last to do it. Tom Osborne's Nebraska teams in the mid-'90s. You talk about a dynasty. And Frank Leahy's Notre Dame's teams did it back in the 40s. You know, God bless Dabo. He's got this underdog thing down to a science. But the most important part is the team buys in. They've been here before. 4th national title game experience here in the college football playoff era. Advantage or disadvantage against LSU playing at their place?
To me, it's actually an advantage. When I think about Clemson, they thrive off of the underdog. Well, right now, realistically, they're not an underdog anymore. I don't care if LSU's a 1.5-point favorite. All things are equal. But you're going on essentially the road to Louisiana, and it's a road game. So if you're in that Clemson locker room, what you're saying is, hey, gentlemen, it's us against the world. All we have is all we got, the men in this room. That's it. So that is what Clemson, I think, is going to have to use as their fuel to propel them forward.
Yeah, and Dabo hasn't had to do much work, right? The media, we did it for him for a lot of the year. We gave him all the talking points, the bulletin board material, and he just ran with it. That's what he did. You know, this is the Roy bus all over again from a year ago. This is what he thrives in. His players believe in it, but they also know, sitting in that locker room, that they're the best out there. And you cannot say that it isn't an advantage, having played in big games like this. But LSU has proven to us all year long, with all the big games they played in, it's not going to matter much.
Yeah, when I think about, is it an advantage that Clemson has been there before, I don't think it's much.
Well, a lot of this team, in terms of Lawrence and Ross and Higgins, these guys from a year ago.
So I don't think so. I played in the national championship in 2010, and really the advantage comes in, have you played in a big game before? Sure. But when I think about LSU, no, these players haven't played in a national championship, but they've played in about 5 huge games all season long. Essentially, in college football in this day and age, every game is a win or go home type of game. So LSU has played in huge games. Clemson, they just know, their body knows the schedule of this type of playoff. Wait a little bit, national.
Well, you talk to any coach in the SEC, they'll tell you getting to Atlanta for the SEC championship is as big as atmosphere and game as any game you'll play all season, including the playoff and the national championship. We are trending towards predictions of this game, including Clemson winning if. Leaf and Acho are going to put a period on this show and how Clemson can go on to win another national championship. Oh, what about the flow versus the fro?
Who has better hair, me or Trevor Lawrence? His hair flows, but I like more of the poofy look.
It goes up a lot higher than mine, so he's got that on me.
I just wanted something that identifies me, so I decided to grow out my hair, and now I'm just a tall black dude with bushy hair.
I had a buzz cut, so I just wanted to change it up, and I grew it out, and it just stuck.
When I get up in the morning, I get my hair ready by putting water in it and moisturizing.
I'm not really superstitious about my hair. If I wanted to cut it, I'd do it. I would say Justin has better hair.
I want to say me.
We joke around about it a lot.
Path to the College Football Playoff is presented by AT&T.
So much gold on their fingers, yet a huge chip on their shoulders. These defending champs are feeling disrespected. And that's just how they like it.
We got to go 30-0. I mean, we ain't got no choice.
This is familiar ground for Clemson. The Tigers know how to win here. Cats who are most comfortable when they are dogs. Underdogs.
Here you go, Dabo. Baltimore material right in front of you. Clemson, the underdog. That doesn't bother Clemson, 7-2 in postseason games, which it was an underdog, and that includes 2 championship game wins over Alabama. So there you have it. We just created the scenario. Vegas did. They're the ones that listed Clemson as the underdog in this one, but it hasn't seemed to matter. So let's play the prediction game. We'll get to that point, but first I want to start with this. Clemson wins this game against LSU if?
Simple. Turn Joe Burrow over 2 times. You need 2 interceptions off of Joe Burrow. On average in a college football game, they're 13.5 possessions. Clemson has to find a way to skew that. 8 our way, maybe 5 or 6 LSU's way. Beyond that, you say, how are you going to turn Joe Burrow over? Well, Justin Fields, he had only thrown 1 pick all year long. Clemson got 2 off him. They're going to have to find a way to get 2 off Joe Burrow.
Perhaps a little bit of pressure, get him to force a throw that maybe he would want to make, maybe a tipped pass, something to get Joe Burrow to turn the ball over. Easier said than done. Clemson wins this game if?
Not just interceptions for me, it's just turnovers, period. If they get him to turn it over 1+ times, that means pick it or make him fumble in some way, shape, or form. That's how they win this game. Also, the wide receivers who were non-existent in the national semifinal because of those great corners, they have to be explosive. They have to look like what they looked like against Notre Dame last year in the semifinal, against Alabama. Justin Ross, T. Higgins, Amari Rodgers on the inside. All 3 have to have big games if they're going to win.
And you know, Matt, let me say this, because there's a difference defensively between a turnover and a takeaway. It might seem like semantics, but there's a difference. A turnover, the offense just gives it to you.
Yeah.
Let me rephrase and say Clemson's going to have to get takeaways.
Yep.
Because they're going to actually have to go force a fumble,
That's right.
punch the ball out. They're going to have to scheme and trick Joe Burrow, because Joe Burrow's not just going to turn it over. So that's my mistake. Clemson's going to have to go take what's there.
Now, I'm not the analyst here on this set, but I'll tell you this. Watch for big plays out of the special teams. Games like this, when you have so much talent, it tends to be a play on special teams, block, kick return, punt return, that could change the tide in a game of this magnitude. Prediction time. LSU, Clemson. Neither of you would be wrong for going either way, but Ach, we'll start with you.
As it stands right now, Clemson is a phenomenal football team. They've won so many games in a row, but there's something about a magical, mystical season that LSU is having. I think LSU finds a way to get it done and writes the perfect storybook ending.
Yeah, there's something about seasons of destiny and what it should look like. I was a part of one, and it didn't quite go the way we anticipated. You were a part of one as well. Didn't quite go as well. I think the team for the last 2 years has been Clemson. They are about to go 30-0 and win back-to-back national championships. This is going to be special for Dabo and everybody associated with Clemson.
If they pull that off,
that'd be amazing.
You could talk about this Clemson program is the best in college football history. 30 consecutive wins in a national championship, but there is that story element going on with LSU. It'll all happen at the Superdome.